Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. This is our year to shine, and this is going to be a continued discussion on Francine Jay's The Joy of Less. So last time I went through the first section, which is the intro in the book, basically about thinking about stuff, sort of evaluating why you have all that you do, sort of looking around and assessing. You're supposed to count everything and write it all down that you own. I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that, but we are going to be going in the next section that I'll talk about in the next video, room by room. So I could potentially see myself doing an inventory at that point, not doing every paper clip and hair tie, but at least, kitty alert, at least having a sense of office supplies and things like that. So now in this video, I'm going to go through the second section, part 2. It's called streamlining. And she has different words that begin with the first letter, spell out streamline, I should say. So S is for start over. T is for trash, treasure, or transfer, which I mentioned last time. R is reason for each item. E is everything in its place. A, all surfaces clear. I mentioned that one last time. M for modules. L for limits. I, and I said this last time too, if one comes in, one goes out. So we'll go into more detail about that. N, narrow down. And E, everyday maintenance. Okay, so starting over is the first one. And I like the thought of this. I don't know how realistic it would be for me. Well, actually, it would be totally unrealistic for me in this place that I am now. But her suggestion is that if you're going to go through a room, that you basically completely empty it out. So say you were going to do your dining room and you had a kitchen or living room nearby, you would drag all your furniture, every single thing that that you have in that room somewhere else, and then you slowly put things back. The reason that I would probably like that is because she's being very distracting, is because I would probably try to figure out other ways to maybe decorate or put furniture in a different way. I wouldn't be able to put all my stuff out anywhere in this place that I'm at. But I like that idea, and she makes some points that if you do it, then you start to realize more what you have, and then you also might realize that maybe in the other room where you still have stuff and you've already put everything back that you like, and you think, well, I don't really need that, or I didn't even notice that wasn't there. So it helps you also pare down. Okay, trash, treasure, or transfer. This is what I mentioned when I said sometimes, like on the home renovation shows where they are trying to get the people to really simplify. They'll have little bins where they have to decide, this makes sense. What is trash? What is a treasure? And what are you going to transfer to somebody else? And I like the idea of the transferring. And I mentioned last time too, Francine said something like, if you like to sew and you have all this stuff for sewing, but you're just not really doing it, and you know someone in your life well, or a family member that would like to have all those things, but then you can, give it to them, but with a caveat that it's going to be accessible to you if you maybe ask, like once in a while, if you want to use it. So maybe when you transfer, you can think of that if you're really having trouble letting go of something that you hope that you could use once in a while. Obviously, I think treasure is pretty straightforward. There are some things that you just wouldn't part with. But she makes a point to tell us that, again, if you have something that is really special, then it should be getting its due. It should be on display. It should be being admired. It shouldn't just be in some storage tote or something where nobody can see it. So treasure is obviously the items that you'll keep. And it should contain just what the name implies, the things that you truly cherish, for either their beauty or their functionality. If you haven't used something in over a year, it probably doesn't belong here. Although sometimes your treasures are things that are more decorative, don't you think? Or sentimental. They might not have a use. If you have that much difficulty parting with something, put it in the temporary undecided box. That's a good idea. And then you don't want to devote valuable space to that if you're not using it. So what she suggests is that if you give yourself a certain time period, like say you have a box where it's undecided and you put it away for 6 months and then you don't touch or look for any of that stuff for a certain period of time, you take the box and you donate it. I don't know if I could do that because I would be afraid that there was a treasure in there. But I see what she's saying. And then the transfer pile, this is where the perfectly good items are that are no longer good for you. I think we know what trash is, so I didn't really go through that. Don't worry, you don't have to spend weeks putting your possessions up for adoption also. That's true as well. If you don't have the time to do something like sell it online or have a yard sale, then you can definitely drop it off at Goodwill centers, and there's plenty of places that you can do it. Religious organizations, homeless shelters. Your cast-offs can do a world of good in your own community. Consider giving books to your local library. Yeah. All right, so then it's interesting that I think she wanted to spell the word streamline, but this R, reason for each item, seems like a part of something you'd have to do. You'd have to sort of evaluate before you decided whether it was trash, treasure, or transfer. So when you look around at things, you think, what is this? What is the purpose of this? One thing I got out of this section was something I haven't really thought of. When you're going to be a minimalist, she tells us that it's not about getting rid of stuff. It's just not about getting rid of stuff, but it's trying to have the minimum number of things so that you can still do what you need to do. So maybe you have 10 different cooking pots, but 2 of them are going to do a sufficient job and you don't need all the other ones. I know I just recently, within the last 2 years, replaced some of my cookware, and I didn't end up replacing the smallest little, saucepan, because I thought, how often do I really need that and a medium-sized one going at the same time? I suppose if you're doing gravy and also something, I'm not a big cook and I don't have tons of company over. So I really basically just have 2 pots now and I guess a frying pan, a saute pan. And that gets me by. So I don't have a giant set of cookery anymore, aside from the Corningware and stuff that I told you is in storage. Also, she's talking about the treasured things as well here. They might not have a reason, but they might be a cherished part of your heritage or your family. But for things that are like a tote bag that you got at a promotional event or something that you were at, do you really need to keep that? Probably not. Some items have strong credentials for staying in your home, but are identical, or nearly so, to something else you own. How did multiple versions enter your household in the first place? So remember I talked about the water bottles last time? And I explained there was a reason for them at one time. And I will tell you that in this last week I got rid of 2. I can't say I totally pared down my collection, but I did get rid of 2. And especially when things are gifts, that might be hard. Others were likely replacements. You might have bought something that broke. And this is an interesting discussion that she makes here. How many times have you had something, maybe like you bought a new television because your older one, it was just time and it was worn out. So then you bring this new one home, and then you're looking at the old one and you're kind of going, well, it's not that bad. Like I should probably just, put that one in the guest room, and like, what if this new one breaks and I need a backup? Or I spent so much money, I remember paying that one off and I can't get rid of it. So you go through all this talk with yourself about these things, and I can relate to that. But she does say if you replace something that you need to you need to pass that old one on, or you are going to start having so many duplicates of things. Okay, and remember I mentioned all the bobby, or not, yeah, I do have a lot of bobby pins, I guess, but all the hair elastics and paper clips and things. So she says, other common duplicates are sold in excessive quantities, like paper clips, rubber bands, bobby pins. She mentions pens. You might have 60 pens. And so she says, why not pare these things down to like an actual amount that you use? Because she said something about the pens. Like, imagine if you even like went from 60 down to 30, you still have probably like 20 years worth of pen use, because you might get 6 months to a year out of each one. So when you're paring down in those cases, she says keep the best. And then just, you don't need to have a giant, well, I'm laughing because in my other place I did have this giant thing of paper clips. So I guess I have pared down my paper clips a little bit. But you don't need to have a giant glass thing of paper clips. So still keep your stuff, but just reduce it. All right, and then everything in its place. This sort of seems easy to understand, right? But along with that, once you find a place for everything, there's another part of putting things in their place when you're done with them. So that would be like being tidy as well. Your clutter. Oh, and also I'd mentioned this last time because I had already read this section when I did the last video. So I actually said a few things from this section as well. But remember how I said that she mentions like realms, like your circle of use. And I mentioned that I had some things in storage that if I ended up needing them, I could go get them, but they're not in my immediate day-to-day space. So that's the outer circle, something like that, that's not right where you are. And your inner circle is the space that you keep frequently used, things like toothbrush, laptop, utensils, and other things like that. So you're deciding like which things are accessible, which things are further in the back. Like I have a closet here that's pretty deep, and so you know how we worked on our caution closet last year, and I have excess food and things and tubs of stuff, and they're all way in the back of that closet, and I only have to go to them if there's some sort of emergency, but they're not within reach every day. And she encourages us, whenever you leave a room, that you collect any stray items and return them to the rightful place. And then also, even if they're not yours, like if you have a family, then you at least bring them to the person's room or something so that it gets them out of that room. I mentioned this one last time too, about all surfaces being clear. So I did really go over that one as far as like how to make your surfaces more useful because they are empty. And I tried it in my kitchen. She is so wanting my attention. I tried it in my kitchen, but then I didn't like how bare it looked. Like I found a place to put my pressure cooker and like my Instapot in a closet, and then I just thought like I didn't like how empty it looked without that, so I put it back out. But I did put my NutriBullet away because I haven't been using that as much, so I can still get to it easily, but it's just not on the counter. So I did a little bit of this within the last couple days because I was thinking of it. So she says surfaces are not for storage. I think this is going to be a hard one for me because I constantly have stuff on my desk. And remember the little end table I showed you with decorative things? I just have stuff adorned everywhere. It's just kind of like my decorating style. Okay. And then, okay, so then we're up to M, which is for modules. And this is basically storing things and finding a place for things with other like things that are connected to, like, say you are a sewer and you have all of your threads all together and all of your needles and everything. So it allows you not only to assess all the things that you have, but she even encourages, like, if it is a hobby sort of area or module, that you have a tote or something that's movable. So say you want to work on your knitting or some other project while everybody's watching a movie in the living room, and you can just grab that tote and bring it out and you have everything together. And on that same note, she wants you to make sure, this is reminding me of my stickers for my planner, because I always just buy more. Every time I see new pads, I buy more. She wants you to use up the stuff that you have already before you buy more. So I suppose she would look at my sticker collection and say, like, this is hideously, obsessively overdone, but I do love having a lot of options for them, and they're all organized. I never showed you how I organized them recently. But in terms of, say it is knitting or something, then don't continue buying more yarn until you have gotten to a point where, say it's going to be your tote that you have for this knitting hobby, that it should always be able to be fitting in that box that you have. So finish up projects, use the stuff that you have, and it could encourage you to continue on with creative projects, and then allow yourself to go out and get more. So good advice on that one. And I remember saying to you last year that I went out and got something, I think it was toothpaste, and then I came home and realized that I had 2 more boxes of toothpaste. This was before I keeping track of things as much as I do now. But the modules also help you not unintentionally overbuy for things, because if you keep your extra toothpaste and stuff like that in one spot, then if you're thinking about going out to the store and you just do a quick little check, I'm gonna move my leg because it's falling asleep, then you check in that cabinet and you go like, oh, I don't need toothpaste, instead of having 5 extra boxes of toothpaste. All right, and I went over the having little containers for things. She says this book is not about going out and buying all these little things at the dollar store to organize your stuff. I mean, maybe you might get into that once you are putting your hobby box together. But it's not about just organizing stuff. It's also about minimalizing it and using what you have too. All right. And then L is for limits. So you have to kind of come to your own point on this one, where it's like, what is the number of things that I'm going to stop at? So say, again, with the yarn, you might use the container size as your limit, where it's like, I can't buy any more yarn until I have used it. So that applies to everything. So she says, let's use books as example. We all read books and then we put them, in a little bookshelf, and do we ever have the intention of opening them again? I mean, some people collect books, so that's a little bit different. But she does suggest that, like, why are we keeping some of these things? Like, they served a purpose. We enjoyed them. Like, who are we trying to display them for now? Like, to have a little display of all the books we've read? I don't know. I suppose if you are, really into books, then that might be your thing. But so she says, to try to give them away to people that you know, or to donate them to the library, like she said in another section. Limits also help tame those ever multiplying craft and hobby supplies, right? So again, this is where she said, like, don't buy more until you've used what you have. And then she goes into an interesting thought. When you do think about, say, like the pioneers, they never had excess because a lot of times there, first of all, wasn't a huge supply of things, and then maybe they didn't have a huge amount of money to spend. So they really did use everything they had, and they probably saved up for it. We have this consumer lifestyle where we just buy, and we're bombarded with advertising. So back in the simpler times, I suppose, it was difficult enough to acquire necessities, let alone anything extra, she said. And we can zip over to our local supermarket and purchase whatever our heart desires at this point, like because of mass production and everything. So setting limits not only helps you, it also eases other members of the household. Yeah, because it allows them to really embrace this more minimalist lifestyle. And yeah, a little bit of a side note here. It's like, obviously the limit on your possessions is set by the size of your house, which as a minimalist you may sometime at some point decide to reduce the size of it. Stuff expands to fill the space available, for sure. And as I've been thinking about stuff in my storage unit especially, I struggle with letting some of that stuff go, because ultimately I don't want to live in a tiny little place like this forever. So I kind of think, and I mean, I like all of the artwork. I did let go of some of it when I moved out of my past place. I let go of anything that I thought, like, all right, I don't really think if I even, like, in a couple of years went through my pictures that I'd remember that I had this one. Like if it was something that was like a space filler in the old place. But I have a lot of artwork that I've had for a long time, and so I'm like, I hold on to it because I'm thinking ahead to the future. It's like, I want to have a larger space. I want to have more than 4 or 5 walls around me, and I don't want to have to start over and rebuy all that stuff. So that's kind of my thing with letting go. And also, I suppose I could transfer that to some clothes too, because I told you I don't buy a lot of clothes. So in my old place, I had an extra closet in my office where I had dresses and things like that maybe you would just have for a special occasion, which might come up once a year or something like that. And it saves you from having to go out and try to find a dress. And maybe some women like that, but I just knew that I had certain ones that I could wear. And so I have those all in storage. I can get them if I need them now, but I don't want to let them go. I suppose I could just keep one, but I like having a choice, like a variety of choices. So I'm having a lot of internal talks with myself about letting go, and I don't know that I will become a minimalist, but I'm at least taking some small steps. All right, and then we're up to I, which is if one comes in, one goes out. And that's a way to sort of keep you at that limit that we just talked about too, right? But ultimately, when you get to the end of this chapter, she talks about how if you really are trying to pare down, that you will want to have a deficit on the going outside as you continue doing it. And that leads us to N, narrowing down. So we've already talked a little bit about this in each section, but we have to kind of decide what are our personal essentials. And that, again, is going to depend on your lifestyle. If you have a full kitchen and you always cook huge meals, you're not going to go down to just 2 or 3 pans like I have. So your essentials are going to be different than mine. So everybody's is different. There's no master list for what's in a minimalist's home. In fact, contrary to popular belief, there's not even a magic number. It doesn't matter if you own 50, 500, or 5,000 things. What matters is whether it's just enough and not too much for you. Yeah, so narrowing down would have a different meaning for everybody. So, also, she says, this is not just about decluttering. And it's not like doing this huge purge, because what's probably going to happen is if you do a huge purge, it's going to backfire, and then you're going to all of a sudden be like rebuying stuff over the next few months just to replenish things. But again, it's about, she mentions here, like if you have a printer, and does it scan, does it copy, does it do multiple things? Like the Instapot that I have, I don't need a rice cooker, I don't need a slow cooker. I mean, that one does even more things than I've ever done with it. So that's a very multi-purpose item. So that has good value. So that's what you're doing when you're narrowing down. So maybe you might buy something new to replace like 4 different things. And that is still being a minimalist, because you pass those other things on, and then now you just have the one thing that that does the same amount of stuff. Sorry, I'm still not totally well, so sorry, I'm losing my voice a little bit. As we're happily narrowing down our items, some things will stop us in our tracks. And more often than not, they'll be sentimental. Yeah, so that's when things can get hard. These are the memories, and they're just difficult to part with. but we minimalists have ways of dealing with them too. If you've inherited a pile of someone's things, don't feel obligated to keep them. So she says things like, think about taking pictures of things. Like, I remember saying that to one of you guys in a comment last year. You were saying that you got so many nice cards throughout the year and you felt like you didn't know what to do and you just felt bad giving them away. And I said, well, why don't you make a video or, you know, save pictures of them? And then you have less of a footprint, but you still have the memory of it. So she does mention that. Or like if your grandmother gave you her set of china as her dying wish or something, and you just like, you know you won't use it all and you just don't want it to sit in the attic. Well, maybe you take one little place setting and you make like a special display, and it's something that you honor and you look at every day, or you even just photograph it, you know. So she tries to take the guilt out of narrowing down some of these things. Digitalizing. And one of you mentioned in a recent comment about how you have so much digital stuff too. So I suppose that could also sort of weigh you down. But in terms of stuff, at least it takes up such a minimal amount of space. All right, and then the last letter is E. And so once you've done all this, then you have everyday maintenance. So again, it's not like just doing this huge declutter, huge purge, and then being done with it, and then acquiring things over the next few years so that you just get back to the same point. Once you've worked through all these streamline letters and steps, starting over, separating out your stuff, trash, treasure, transfer, making sure that you have a good reason for everything, finding a place for everything, and putting everything in its place, keeping all of your surfaces clear, arranging our things into modules, imposing limits on our possessions, heating off the quote, if one comes in, one goes out, and narrowing down our stuff. We can't simply call it a day and return to our old way. Goodness, no. We need to keep things up with the home every day, with some everyday maintenance. So yeah, she's basically saying what I already said about you can't just like do it once and then be done. Sometimes you can feel like you're always on the defense, trying single-handedly to stop the tsunami of stuff threatening your home. I would suppose especially if you had like a spendthrift spouse or something. But you can play offense too by getting off mailing lists. These are good suggestions. Canceling magazine subscriptions, opting out of gift exchanges, and generally making it known that you're pursuing a minimalist lifestyle. And one of you commented about how you're trying to get your family to realize that you just don't want stuff. Like, make a donation for me, you know? I thought that was a great suggestion. I was also thinking, like, what if you tell your family, if they're really set on giving you something, what if you say, whatever you give me, make it an experience. Don't make it a tangible item. Like, buy me tickets to something that I might want to go to, or a restaurant gift certificate, or like something that is consumable, like as an experience, and then it's not something that's gonna take up space or collect dust in my house, you know, but you could say it delicately like that. But I think communicating that can be sometimes hard, you know, because there's family members that just love to give you things. And she does talk about how if you're in an office setting, that you might start to feel like when you get used to this sort of minimalist lifestyle at home, you're going to start to see excess in the workplace as well. And so you can kind of make like little subtle things that nobody would notice as far as like cleaning off surfaces and things. Well, they might notice that, but you can do your part maybe at your workplace too to get rid of the clutter. And she mentions other people's clutter, like I touched upon. It's like you have to just at least get it to their area or bring it back to their house if someone left something at your house. And then you have to just keep decluttering. That's what this everyday maintenance is. The initial sweep that we'll probably do during this book reading, it isn't the all end all be all of purging. In fact, it's just the beginning. You'll find that your minimalist powers will grow stronger with time, and those must-haves that survived your first decluttering won't look as essential in the second round. I can understand that, yeah. And for that reason, I recommend purging in cycles. After your initial decluttering, take another look around after a few weeks or months. You'll see your possessions with fresh eyes and more seasoned perspective. In the meantime, you'll have started to experience the joy and freedom of the minimalist lifestyle. Because, yeah, she does hit home, and I didn't really say this during this section, but again, she tells us about how much space this is freeing up for us to, I mean, it's like mentally getting rid of the clutter, but also it's like space to do stuff. Maybe you got rid of a piece of furniture and now you can do yoga on your rug or something there, you know. Practice, of course, makes perfect. Instead of purging in spurts, you may prefer a slow and steady approach, like a one-day declutter. Simply commit to disposing of one item each day and every day. Yeah, I know some people are doing that.